welcome to the College Football Tailgate Show presented by Football Gameplan. I am David Hasek, and I am joined, as always, by the czar of the playbook, Emery Hunt. We are officially in the home stretch of the college football season, and there's a lot of drama to go around last week, to be sure. Let's get into it with the 4-minute offense. If Alabama's playoff hopes weren't bleak enough after losing to LSU and dropping out of the top 4 in the college football playoff rankings, they sure did last week as Tua Tagovailoa went down with a very serious hip injury. He has had surgery and it was successful. Doctors are hopeful. But what does this mean for Tua's future and for Alabama going forward?
Well, that's a great question. It's a two-part question. Let's start with Tua Tagovailoa's future. They said it's a 6 to 8 month recovery period, and they expect him to make a full recovery, which is great. And they're saying he's going to be on a limited weight-bearing recovery plan. So he should make a full recovery. But I think you still have to be worried if you're looking at him from an NFL draft perspective. He had 2 surgeries on his ankles, now has a hip injury that he had surgery on. You have to worry about him long term. They talk about all these quarterbacks. They love to talk about Lamar Jackson and if he gets hurt or when he gets hurt, if he's going to get hurt. You hear that about Deshaun Watson. You hear that about Russell Wilson. Here's an example of a guy that is what they're talking about and not those other players. So Tua's long term, if you're an NFL evaluator, that has to be factored in because the last 2 seasons, we've seen him miss time with injuries and surgeries, not the sprained ankle here or there, but surgeries. That's not good. As far as Alabama is concerned, you look at what they can do. They can run the football. Najee Harris, a really good back. They still have 3 outstanding receivers, really 5 outstanding receivers in that passing game. They're going to be fine. The passing game is going to be fine. We saw their backup go in there and do a great job. I think offensively they'll be just fine. Defensively, you worry about them against teams that can really attack them vertically down the field, but that doesn't affect Tua's availability. So I think Alabama will still be fine. They have to close out in a big way against Auburn in the Iron Bowl.
They will need a lot of help, too, if they want to finish in that top 4. Just a lot of moving pieces around them. One of those moving pieces is Clemson. The Clemson resume continues to improve. They remain undefeated, and they're finally starting to get some respect, but now they're really starting to pick up in terms of their ability on offense and defense. Are the Tigers peaking at just the right time to really make a run?
Absolutely. You talk about a team that now saw the first initial rankings come out that didn't involve them in the top 4, and they went out that next week and just blasted NC State. They are also coming off blasting Wake Forest. So this team is now angry. They're playing better football, like you said, on both sides of the ball. Their offense is clicking. Defensively, they start to look like that defense we saw last year with all those first-round picks and all those NFL players. So, yes, they're peaking at the right time. I don't think anyone is going to challenge them the rest of the way. Their biggest test, to be honest, was Wake Forest, and they beat the brakes off them last weekend. So, yes, they're peaking at the right time. It's going to be a great thing to see down the stretch because I think on the opposite side, who's going to challenge them from the coastal side of things? Probably no one. And I think when you look at Clemson going forward, Clemson is a really good football team. They'll be tough to beat. It'll be hard to keep them out of the playoffs. Right now, they're 11-0. So imagine keeping a 13-0 Clemson team out of the college football playoff. It won't happen. I think they're peaking at the right time.
Going to be huge for the Tigers, to be sure. Obviously, at this point of the season, we're focused on the postseason awards, but there have also been a lot of standouts that really haven't gotten that much attention. There always is in college football. But who do you think is the most underrated player so far this season that's caught your eye?
Well, you talk about, over 130 some odd FBS programs, so there's a lot of players to choose from. Let's talk about a guy that's in the top 10 that's fighting for a berth in the college football playoffs, Utah Utes quarterback Tyler Huntley. No one is talking about how efficient he has been. He has gotten better every year for the Utes. He has this football team playing great football. They had the one slip-up against USC, and in that ball game, they lost their starting tailback, Zach Moss, to an injury very early, and so he had to overcompensate for that. They lost their ability to run the football, be balanced. That's why they lost to USC. They have the best defense, and with his efficient play and the way he's playing in the passing game and putting the ball where it needs to be, allowing those receivers to run after the catch, allowing his offense to come over with points to chew up that time of possession, which gets that already great defense more time to get adjusted on the sideline. Then when they get back out there, they are pressuring their quarterback at a high clip. Tyler Huntley is playing better than many are willing to give him credit for. He's a big reason why Utah is in the conversation for not only the Pac-12 title, but also a berth in the college football playoffs.
And it's going to be a fight between them and the Oregon Ducks to see who potentially gets that bid in the playoff. And that's one of the main obstacles that Alabama will have to overcome in order to get into that top 4 is if there's a one-loss Pac-12 team in there.
Yeah, and you talk about a team like Utah that has the SEC elements. They can run the ball. They play great defense. Their quarterback is athletic. He's mobile. He's efficient. He's essentially doing what Jake Fromm is doing, but with more athleticism and more efficiency in bigger games. So you look at how he's playing in these big games, and we know the quarterback that everyone loves to talk about, Justin Herbert, and how he does in big games, he doesn't do well. So the matchup between Utah and Oregon will be one to watch. And if whoever wins that game, I think Utah can definitely win that game. But if they lose, Oregon, that's a big win on their resume. So I think whoever wins the Pac-12 will get a seat at the table in the playoffs.
Going to be interesting to that for sure. And there are 2 major jobs that are still very much up for grabs in 2 of these big conferences, but now the coach has to fit the situation. So the question is now, which is the better job? Is it USC or Florida State? We talked about potential fillers for those openings, but right now, which is the better job? Because Florida State's got a culture clash kind of going on. USC just having a down year, but which one's the better option?
No, for tax purposes, it's definitely Florida State. You talk about no state tax in Florida, so you're going to get all your money if you're a head coach down there in Florida. But you look at what the recruiting aspect of it. Florida State has a rich tradition of a healthy, pot of recruits to choose from. Problem is, so many of these schools are popping up, and you're having to battle against Florida Atlantic, FIU, all these schools now you have to compete against. Miami. At USC, you really only have to compete against teams coming into California. You don't have to compete with UCLA. You don't really have to compete with San Diego State. So you still are the big dog on the proverbial block out there in Compton. So when you look at USC, yes, the tradition is there, but I don't think it still has the same glitz and glamour as it once had. So I'm going to say Florida State is the more attractive job. USC is ideal if you can get in there and win, but if you want to win right away, to me, I think that's Florida State.
And with Florida State, too, you can actually develop your own culture, whereas USC, it's kind of built into the job when you get hired on. So if you want to build your own legacy, Florida State might be the best place to do it. When we come back, we're going to have a lot of things to talk about here, including some huge games in the FBS and the D2 and D3 playoffs right here on the College Football Tailgate Show, presented by Football Gameplan. Stay with us.
Be sure to order your copy of the Go-Go Offense by Coach Brennan Marion on footballgameplan.com/GoGo Offense. Coach Marion goes through the ins and outs of his explosive offense, one that's tearing up the college football field and putting a lot of points on the scoreboard. Again, you can order your copy at footballgameplan.com/GoGo Offense.
Football Game Plan is brought to you in part by Ninth and Lux. Visit the website ninethandlux.com and check out the clothing gallery. Do You Music with featured artist IW and his latest album, Season 2. You can check that out on iTunes as well as doyoumusic.com. Nesby Phipps, art, life, entertainment. NesbyPhipps.com. Grind It Out Fitness. Visit the website grinditoutfitness.com and download the app.
Welcome to footballgameplan.com, where football makes sense. I'm Emery Hunt, the czar of the playbook, bringing you another edition of Inside the Lab, Hunt's Playbook, where today we're going to talk about how you can defend the ISO play, which is one of the simplest running plays an offense can run, and defenses still have problems trying to shut down the simplistic running play, which is coming down the heart of their defense, right down the A-gap. And I'm going to show you how they can stop this play, which is usually an opener. Teams love to run the ISO beginning of the game, coming out of halftime, trying to start a new drive. I'm going to show you how defenses can stop the ISO. What the ISO is, like I said before, basic A-gap running play led by the fullback coming in the hole. Tailback is following right behind him. Quarterback is carrying out his fake after he hands it off. What the offensive line is going to do, you're going to have the tight end is going to try to work up and hook this defensive end. You're going to have this tackle try to get down to get this backer here. You're going to have the guard and center communicate, try to double team this tackle while the center is going to work up to get this linebacker here, try to get him blocked. And we're going to have the a weak side guard work in to try to get this linebacker if he's crashing down. We're going to have this defensive end try to get hooked as well by the weak side tackle. Receivers are going to try to cut off the cornerbacks to create an alley here. And in case the running back wants to bounce it outside, he can. Now, simple running play But again, defenses have a lot of problems stopping the run. And stopping the run, like I've always said, it's about attitude and want to. You have to want to stop the run. Now, what they're going to do, this is a stacked defense. We have the linebacker stacked inside the defensive end. So what's going to have to happen, this defensive end can't allow this tight end to reach him. He's going to have to fight hard across his face and secure this C gap, attacking the outside shoulder of this offensive tackle. Why? Because he has a linebacker protecting him right here. So he can go aggressive and try to cross the face of the tight end, chipping that shoulder of the offensive tackle, try to create a mashup right here at the line of scrimmage and force the running back to bounce it outside. Now what this defensive tackle has to do, his job is to stonewall this base block by the guard. Boom, stonewall his base block and control the B gap, which is here. So his job is to control his B gap. Now you have the Mike backer, which is going to take on this fullback. But first, let's look at the nose tackle. His job is to fight through the double team and protect this A gap. So his job is fight through this double team, protect the A gap. He has to get this guy inside shoulder to force this fullback to get caught at the line of scrimmage to bottle up the running back. You're trying to force him to bounce outside. Defensive end, his job again, can't allow himself to get hooked. Try to take that inside shoulder because he has an alley defender with your safeties. They're playing cover 2 back here, so their job is to protect this alley. And now the cornerbacks can't allow themselves to get cut off, fight there hard. Once they see the down blocks by those offensive linemen, they know they can go aggressive inside to try to keep it boxed in. That's what you want to do. Box everything in, and that way you can dictate the turns of what the running back is going to do. Now this linebacker in the middle, the Mike backer, his job is to take this fullback head on at the hole. You want to cause a problem at the line of scrimmage, force this guy back here to make a decision here and not here. Once you force him to make a decision here, he plays right into the hands of what you want to do defensively. You have your backer here, you have your cornerback crashing hard to cut off the alley on both sides, and what you have this backer, he's playing the inside shoulder of this guard that's trying to reach him, boom, get inside, and now you've bottled up the running game. See, it's a simple concept, and that's what happens. Outside guys are reading the down blocks. They can go aggressive. Inside guys on the defensive ends, on the edges, they're fighting across the face of tackle and the tight end, trying to secure those C gaps. And inside guys fighting through a base block, fighting through a double team, taking the fullback head on, forcing him to make a decision here, and that's when you win versus the ISO. It's a simple defensive play. It's about heart and about want to. If they can stop the ISO, if teams can stop the ISO, a lot of times you put offenses in backed up situations.
Football Game Plan is brought to you in part by Financial Coaching LLC, Investment, Retirement, Security. Stewardship Credit. Financial growth is in your hands. StewardshipCredit.com. Adrienne Marie Photo, photographer, writer, management. AdrienneMariePhotography.com. Lock Multimedia.
Welcome back to the Football Game Plan College Football Tailgate Show here on the Game Plus Network. Now it's time to talk about some of the most consequential matchups around all divisions this week. We're going to start in the SEC. LSU can't seem to do anything wrong at this point, but they might be looking ahead of their opponent this week. Maybe Arkansas will give them a little bit of trouble. Is this a trap game for LSU?
Not at all. Arkansas is 44-point underdogs in this ball game. They won't win this game against LSU. The only reason why LSU can both blow out Arkansas and also Arkansas can cover that spread, LSU's offense is dynamic. They're going to score. Problem is they're scoring quickly. They're scoring a lot, which means their defense is not getting rest. They're not getting a time to adjust to really close out a ball game. And we saw this last week against Ole Miss. Now, Arkansas is not Ole Miss offensively with those tremendous freshmen that Ole Miss have at their disposal at quarterback and also running back. So they don't have to worry about that problem, but Arkansas will score points in this ball game. LSU will not get a shutout. They won't cover the spread. So if you are a betting guy, take Arkansas in the points, but LSU will definitely win by at least 30 in this game. So don't think this is a slip-up. Arkansas is not that good of a football team. LSU will dominate.
No speed bump for LSU. Moving on now to the Big Ten. Penn State taking on Ohio State. This might easily be the biggest game of the weekend. This is the biggest test for Ohio State, to be sure. And for Penn State, this is a lifeline to get back into the playoff conversation.
Yeah, this is a huge lifeline. If they can upset Ohio State, it throws everything in the mix because them beating Ohio State would now invite that Pac-12 champion. It would now push out maybe Alabama to 6 instead of just on the cusp of getting into the playoffs. So a lot could change if Penn State can get the win. We saw them do a great job in closing out the Golden Gophers last weekend with their defense. Offensively, still not where they were when they played Michigan. I thought that was their best offensive game, and they have to get back to that. I don't think they can do that against the best defense in college football, which is the Ohio State Buckeyes. And right now, a guy that's probably 1 or 2 in the Heisman Trophy voting in Justin Fields, a quarterback. So I think Ohio State just firmly, plants themselves at number 1 or in the discussion for number 1 between them and LSU, and just makes this thing much more interesting. I think a lot of people want to see LSU versus Ohio State, and this is a big game where they can prove that, hey, yeah, we're going to make this claim. We're going to try to fight our way through the rest of the season, Big Ten championship game, and the playoffs, and get to that game against LSU. So I think Ohio State dominates as well.
Dominates. That's an interesting word to use for that one. On to the Big 12. TCU taking on Oklahoma. Playoff hopes holding on by a thread in the Big 12, but Jalen Hurts is coming off his Heisman moment, that huge comeback over Baylor last weekend. This is a huge game for Oklahoma, but TCU, always a fly in the ointment team.
And especially when you talk about TCU's defense. And when you look at Coach Barnett and what he does out there with that 4-2-5, they do a great job of swarming and applying pressure. That's what you have to do. That's what Baylor did early in this game, which helped them build that 28-3 lead against Oklahoma. But Jalen Hurts is a guy that has ice water in his veins. We've seen it time after time again. Him bringing his team back, him coming back, him doing a great job and putting his team in position to win. They did that against Baylor, which I think is a more consistent team than TCU. TCU's offense hasn't been the explosive offense that we have seen throughout Coach Barnett's time at TCU. So they may have taken a step back this year offensively. Defensively, they'll still be in the mix, but I still believe what happened last week for Oklahoma is a springboard to what is the sign of things to come. I like the Sooners.
And the other side of every comeback is, of course, the team that blew the lead, and that is Baylor. They dropped their undefeated spot last week. Now they take on the Texas Longhorns. How, if you're the Baylor Bears, do you respond after this game, and how are you going to be able to get this victory to come back from that loss against Texas?
Well, both teams are coming off tough losses. So you have this game where we like to say who cannot avoid the second loss. So Baylor lost probably in a more dramatic fashion, but you have to give them credit for how they were able to build that lead. They were aggressive on the back end. They turned the ball over. Offensively, their pace that they operate with puts a lot of pressure on your defense. You really can't get adjusted right away. Texas, I think, is a bad matchup right now for themselves because they want to run the football, but I think Baylor does a great job in stopping the run. We saw that last week. But on the perimeter is where Texas also can have some success. But I like Baylor's secondary, and I think the Bears will do a great job in forcing the Longhorns to be in a one-dimensional game. So I'm taking Baylor to get back on the winning track and knocking off Texas.
That's going to be a huge one for sure. Now we move to the AAC. SMU taking on Navy. Huge game that might decide an AAC champion. Both teams have rounded into good form in the last 4 weeks. The midshipmen are really driving a lot of momentum, but SMU, we know they have that explosive offense.
Yeah, a lot of people thought Navy was going to upset Notre Dame last week, but Notre Dame was able to roll in that ball game, winning by more than 20 points. And Navy's option does give you a huge problem if you're a defense. But SMU's defense, I still believe, is very good for the AAC standards. But offensively, James Prochet should be back out there. Their big-time receiver, outstanding talent, one that's underrated. He's already going to the Shrine game. He got his invite. He's accepted. I think they can win this ball game. SMU is only 7-point favorites here. So that tells you about Navy's defense, tells you about how good Navy is. I thought Navy had an opportunity last week to really create some noise, but Notre Dame showed you that this isn't the Navy teams of old that could have gone in there and beat Notre Dame. I think SMU can continue to win, take care of business, and knock off the midshipmen.
And before we go to the end of the show here, let's move into some playoff football. FCS still has one more week, FBS a couple weeks to go, but Division II and Division III, the playoff fields have been drawn, and they will get underway this weekend. In Division II, a lot of intrigue around this first matchup. Notre Dame College of Ohio taking on Westchester out of the PSAC. You're very familiar with Westchester. What kind of challenges are they going to get from Notre Dame?
Well, they're going to get a challenge up front, but that's not the game you want to play against Westchester, who's stout on both sides of the line of scrimmage. Where Westchester has an advantage and where I like them to win, tight end play. Dan Newhouse is an outstanding tight end. He caught 2 touchdown passes in their last game, which helped them knock off a very tough Cal University of Pennsylvania team 20-19. So Dan Newhouse, the tight end, I think will be a big reason why they win.
And moving on to Division III now, Muhlenberg taking on MIT. MIT looking good, and they've continued a good streak after winning the NUMAC title. Muhlenberg, though, not to be overlooked.
At all. They have one of the best defensive players in Division III. Frankie Feaster, the defensive end, 11.5 TFLs, or 11.5 sacks, 20 TFLs. So he has set up shop on the opposite side of the line of scrimmage. Muhlenberg is 10-0 on this season. They're undefeated, doing a great job in playing football. Great defensive football team. They will shut down MIT. I like the Mules.
That'll do it for the College Football Tailgate Show. Don't forget to go to footballgameplan.com and youtube.com/footballgameplan for the FCS Whip Around and for the FCS Opening Drive podcast on SoundCloud and iTunes for all of your FCS news and notes that comes out every single Monday. For Emery Hunt, I'm David Hashagen. Enjoy Week 13, and thanks for watching.